this generation right here, they saw the great acts of courage. They didn't see it all, but they saw some of it. And they're told the stories because it didn't happen that long ago. But they get to reap the benefits of that courageous act. They get to live in a period of freedom. And that freedom results in abundance as they make their own choices, as they begin to set up a whole new life, a period of abundance. But out of that period of abundance comes the next generation. Now, they weren't around for that. They didn't see it. They hear some of the stories. Come on, it's Grandpa. And he liked to tell stories. You know, he says he used to be a wrestler, but it didn't really look like a wrestler. Okay? And so, this generation kind of goes through a period where it's like, they don't have any great newfound freedom. Abundance, there's no such thing as abundance. This is just what everybody has, isn't it? And they go through a period, they don't have to struggle for anything they get. They live in houses they didn't build. They had cars they didn't buy. They, reaping the benefits of the previous two generations, kind of slip into a period of apathy. Just kind of just looking for things to do. And making my friends. You know, I don't have to really work for anything, not to do much. This is just what happens. And out of that period of apathy, though, there's not a lot of desire to go out and fight for anything, earn anything. It's pretty much all been given to you. Comes the next generation that says, wait a minute, that generation didn't do as much, so now you expect me to go do these things? Wait a minute, isn't it my right to have these things, just like my grandfather had and my mom had? I have a right to these things, but they're not available to me for some reason. This is not fair. This is not right. And the society enters a period of dependence. Dependence. And then you get to this generation right here, and this generation says, that ain't right. I don't like what I've had to watch there. And what do you mean I don't get to have these things? And look at everybody else who gets to have these. And this generation grows up in a period of anarchy. Anti-government. Anti-church. Anti-anything I've ever been told. I'll decide what's right for me. Nobody's going to tell me what's right for me. I'll decide. I'll do what I want. And I own these things. And if I don't get them, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight. All the people that are supposed to be giving me these things. It's called anarchy. And then in the history of civilizations, as they go from great struggle to fight for freedom, to this period of abundance, abundance to apathy, from apathy to dependence, from dependence to anarchy. The next stage, bondage again. You guys can sit down. Give a hand. They did a great job. Pretty much the only way I was going to get Papa Joe to come up here was make him part of an illustration. But it's a perfect illustration. You can see the bloodline. You can see the family line as it goes from generation to generation. Now, that span right there, typically there's 2 or 3 generations per span. And from bondage to anarchy, in most civilizations, is about 200 years. Our country was birthed, not really birthed in 1776, it's more like 1783, 84, at the end of the Revolutionary War, somewhere in there. So if you do the math, we are somewhere around 230 years old as a nation. So we've already outlived those things. But you want to take a guess where we are in that process? Any ideas? We're somewhere over here, aren't we? We're somewhere in this period of time right here. Now, you need to know that these weren't all just pagan civilizations that were set up. There were many godly generations that were set up. There were, you have to think of Moses and his people, of Joshua and his people. Remember all those different things? All those different time periods that we went through? Abraham and his people, all those things? And they went through this same kind of progression. It's just something that's part of it. And Satan enters in every single time. Every single time Satan enters in. And if you go to 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. It says this, be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Resist him. Stand firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kind of suffering. But the good news is, well, Satan's got a plan, and that is a plan to take people from bondage to bondage. God has a plan too. Romans chapter 12, verse 1. It says this. It says, therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Doesn't say anything about singing there, does it? Doesn't say anything about guitars or instruments. What's it say? I urge you to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Now, I want you to go to Deuteronomy chapter 6. Deuteronomy 6, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 10. Ready? Deuteronomy 6, verse 10. When the Lord your God brings you to the land he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you a land with large, flourishing cities you did not build, houses filled with all kinds of good things you did not provide, wells you did not dig, and vineyards and olive groves you did not plant, just like these generations we just talked about. Then when you eat and are satisfied, be careful that you do not forget the Lord, who brought you out of Egypt. Out of what? Slavery. Fear the Lord your God. Serve him only and take your oaths in his name. Do not follow other gods, the gods of peoples around you. For the Lord your God, who is among you, is a jealous God, and his anger will burn against you, and he will destroy you from the face of the land. Do not test the Lord your God as you did at Massa. Be sure to keep the commands of the Lord your God and the stipulations and decrees he has given you. Do what is right and good in the Lord's sight, so that it may go well with you and you may go in and take the overland. And then also go now to Judges chapter 2. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges. Verse 10. It says this, after that whole generation had been gathered to their fathers, that means after they passed away, another generation grew up, who neither knew the Lord, who knew neither the Lord nor what he did way back there. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord and served the Baals. They forsook the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped various gods and peoples around them. They provoked the Lord to anger because they forsook him and served Baal and the Ashtoreths. In his anger against Israel, the Lord handed them over to raiders who plundered them. He sold them to their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist. Whenever Israel went out to fight, the hand of the Lord was against them to defeat them. Just as he had sworn to them, they were in great distress. Then the Lord raised up judges who saved them, and etc., etc. You know, I'm horrified when I see accounts of the Holocaust. Not just what happened to those millions and millions of innocent Jews. But you're talking about people that were living in a place, they had jobs, their kids were involved in the arts, their kids were involved in sports, their kids went to school, they had homes, they had a regular schedule, they lived just like we live. And all of a sudden, one day, that was taken from them. Done. Done. I can take you all through the Old Testament and show you again and again and again where God's people walk through this process. And they get down to this place right here, and God says, enough. 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 And he brings judgment. And when he brings judgment, it always results in bondage. I believe with all my heart, the only reason America has not gone through that same process is because of the church. The church is here praying. The church is still reaching. And as long, just like in Sodom and Gomorrah, as long as if there's anybody that will worship God, anybody that will do that, then God will continue to work through his church. I love when it says in Scripture, no matter how bad it is, that my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways. I will heal their land. We're what's standing between the judgment of God and the wrath of God. It's us. You think that it's any better today than it was at the time of Sodom? You read about the time of Sodom and the time of Noah. There's no difference. There's no difference. Wickedness increased dramatically. We stand in that gap. Now the war's going to take place. It's taking place right for us. I just want to tell you about a couple of them. Number one, the sanctity of life. It's Psalm 139. In fact, I'm just going to do one today, and I'll finish the others next week. Psalm 139. Verse 1. The sanctity of life. You know what one of the leading causes of death among teenagers is? The leading cause of death among teenagers is alcohol-related deaths. It's been that for the last 25 years. The second cause in most states is suicide. The third leading cause in most states, in some states, this jumps to number 2, is violence. I'll never forget a year ago, it'll be 2 years this February. I'll never forget getting the phone call. I coached softball over Monterey along with football. I got the phone call that our star player, the top pitcher in the nation, beautiful, beautiful girl. Beautiful and beautiful can be. 4.0 student. She went in her room. She went home from practice that night. Went in her room. Nobody even knew anything was wrong. Found some rope, hung it from the place in her room, and hung herself and died. I think, why? Why? And you think there's not an enemy? There's an enemy. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. Suicide. We live in a culture that has parts of our culture that glorify death. We just looked at it like it was a fad, the whole goth movement, with the black makeup and the fascination with death. We're about to enter a time period here called Halloween. And trust me, I'm not some prude when it comes to that stuff. My kids are going to put on costumes and go trick-or-treat. That's what we've done forever. That's what we will do. We don't go down to all those different paths with all those people. But there are people in the world that that's a holiday where death is celebrated.